morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for January 23rd, 2025. A lot to get through today, including severe thunderstorms outbreaking across the southeast of Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales, a tropical low forecast to form off the northern coast of Queensland and deliver some awesome rainfall accumulations to the Cassowary Coast, that's for sure. We'll also touch on the tropical weather situation for the Northern Territory and WA, with another tropical cyclone expected offshore from Western Australia, and the southwest corner of Western Australia with Tropical Cyclone Sean still offshore. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. But let's get stuck straight into things today with the top story, which is of course far north Queensland. Significant severe weather, some really big time rainfall accumulations expected there over the coming couple of days. So let's just get right stuck into them before we talk about thunderstorms or anything else happening around Australia. So currently not an awful lot actually happening across the far northern reaches of Queensland. There are a couple of thunderstorms here and there, and there were some good rainfall accumulations last night much further inland, up towards about 30 or 40 millimetres of much needed rainfall. But the real stuff is going to be coming through from about Sunday onwards, so enjoy the dry weather while it lasts, but it's certainly not going to feel too dry. I imagine conditions are starting to get quite muggy across the far northern reaches of Queensland, especially around the Cassowary Coast, and it's going to start to feel, especially throughout the course of this weekend, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, that something is beginning to build. So you can see dry conditions expected to continue through Saturday until the rainfall begins to pipe up late Saturday night. The real rainfall, of course, doesn't come in until at least late Sunday night here. You can see rainfall really beginning to stream in from about Sunday afternoon or evening into the Cassowary Coast. It's still light to moderate stuff here, but you can see between other forecast models there is certainly going to be some heavier stuff starting to build. I'm going to use the Axis forecast model here pretty much exclusively. The Axis is a very reliable forecast model, and I find it does a much better job in terms of rainfall accumulations and rainfall rates across the Cassowary Coast. It can get things awfully wrong, and the Axis does kind of fall apart after about Thursday or Friday next week, but for the purposes of this video, I think that the Axis is going to play out exactly how the forecast is how the weather is actually going to play out here. So you can see Sunday night and into Monday morning, there's some heavy falls beginning to develop for locations between Townsville up to Cairns, with the heaviest falls being around Ingham and Cardwell. So the way this rainfall is going to work is it's going to start its way from the south and slowly creep further north, and it's going to come in two rounds. Now, the first round continuing through Monday and into early Tuesday morning here, really heavy through Monday night and into early Tuesday morning. We'll be talking about rates here of about 30 to 40 millimetres an hour for the entire duration of the night, basically. The rainfall will temporarily ease off through Tuesday afternoon by the looks of things. It will also be pretty heavy across parts of the Daintree rainforest too, with heavy falls expected right across the Cassowary Coast, up between Cairns and then throughout the Daintree rainforest as well, up to about Cooktown actually, as this low pressure gyro here basically just sucks the moisture out of the Coral Sea and drives it ashore onto the Cassowary Coast. And you can see here rainfall rates here at about the kind of that 50 to 60 millimetre every 3 hour. This is very accurate. This is in contrasting that to the Eastern Weather forecast model, which is predicting peak rainfall rates of about 10 to 15 millimetres here. You know that type of rainfall doesn't actually happen across the Cassowary Coast pretty much ever. The rainfall is always either super intense or non-existent up there. So the Axis is really proving to be quite a reliable forecast model here, and it's throwing out some pretty wacky numbers for rainfall. It's also much higher resolution in terms of the rainfall here, and it gives you a good idea that this rainfall is going to be coastal based and kind of exclusive to the coast and also some of the mountain ranges just adjacent to the coastline. You can see that Atherton, Ravenshoe and Mareeba and even Cairns in its protected position doesn't actually pick up too much in the way of rainfall. Yes, there will be some good falls here and there on certain days, especially from Wednesday onwards, but the rainfall isn't going to be too heavy there. So you do get a bit of a reprieve to the rainfall on Tuesday afternoon, but the rainfall pipes up again late Tuesday night into very early Wednesday morning, and it's heavy as usual up there. The rainfall continuing through Wednesday, very heavy at times, easing off a little bit Wednesday night as you get further south. You can see the rainfall now starting to spin up a little bit further north, and this is where the second part of the rainfall comes into play, which is going to be pretty much an exclusive for locations north of Tully. So again, you can see the Cassowary Coast getting peppered with heavy falls right throughout the course of Wednesday and into early Thursday morning, and then the heavy falls contracting to the North Queensland coastline around the Daintree rainforest from about Wednesday afternoon right through to about Thursday afternoon. And again, it's from this low pressure system spinning itself up offshore, which is into a different aspect of the forecast. From about Thursday the 30th of January onwards, we are expecting a low pressure system, a weak low pressure system at that to spin itself up just offshore from the North Queensland coastline. And this system does have a bit of a 50-50 chance of becoming a tropical cyclone. It's still a low chance of becoming a tropical cyclone, but at this point we could be seeing some kind of tropical activity in the way of a tropical cyclone offshore from the North Queensland coastline. This is where I'd consider the Axis forecast kind of falling to bits here from about Thursday, Friday onwards. You can can see it really wraps this system up to be quite a strong system and very close to the Queensland coastline. Now, I'm not saying that this is highly unlikely. In fact, a forecast like this is very likely at this time of the year. It can certainly happen, a tropical cyclone forming up here and then slowly tracking down to the central Queensland coastline. That's happened time and time again. But you can see between the other forecast models, there's not an awful lot of support for that. We are expecting a low pressure system to develop at some point throughout the later parts of this week and into next weekend, which will bring yet more rainfall for the North Queensland coastline as well. It's just a little bit more uncertain at this time. So really, you could be looking at about 3 bulk periods of rainfall, that being, of course, Monday night into Tuesday morning, and then late Tuesday night through Wednesday and into early Thursday morning. And then from about Friday afternoon onwards, there'll be another bulk period of rainfall coming through. But the rainfall forecast for that is a little bit more uncertain at this time, just considering we don't know the ins and outs of this tropical low, where it's going to form, how strong it's going to get, and whereabouts it's going to track. The GFS taking it over the Cape York Peninsula, which will bring very heavy falls throughout the course of next weekend and into the first week of February across the Cassowary coast. That would be it'd be similar to how Tropical Cyclone Jasper played out, just of course with much less rainfall, but in terms of the direction of the rainfall and what it will feel like, it'll be similar to Tropical Cyclone Jasper and its remnants low, and how it got stuck over the Cape York Peninsula and drove that rainfall into the Cape York Peninsula and the Cassowary coast, basically. The Eastern Rebef not calling for anything significant, the axis kind of calling for the exact same track as the Eastern Rebef, but just for a semi-significant tropical cyclone here. You can see with wind speeds of around that kind of 100 to 125 kilometre an hour mark, you'd be looking at probably a high-end Category 2, pushing Category 3 here, with a direct hit somewhere between Townsville and Mackay. Of course, it's unlikely at this time. We're looking very far out into the future, and of course, as you can see between other forecast models, yes, tropical stuff is on the forecast, but a full-blown tropical cyclone still isn't set in stone at this time, and the GFS forecast model as well kind of calling for this big monsoonal trough gyro spin-up sort of thing. It's a very confusing forecast this time. Either way, though, the rainfall will continue to pile on for the Cape York Peninsula throughout the first week of February. We just don't exactly know what the rainfall rates and the rainfall accumulations are going to be beyond about Saturday, the 1st of February. Convenient timing. But throughout the rest of January, we know exactly what rainfall is going to be coming through. So let's take a look at those numbers right now, starting from Saturday and pushing this forward into Saturday again. Actually, I got very confused there. But yeah, a week of rainfall here from the Axis G3 forecast model is looking wild, that's for sure. You can see here along the Cassowary coast, along the Queensland coastline, you can see rainfall accumulations peaking out at up to 1,000 millimetres. Now, I did say that 4-figure rainfall accumulations, they weren't possible, but they're actually quite likely here, especially around Innisfail and Tully. And with the nature of the rainfall that's going to be coming ashore here, I have no reason whatsoever to doubt these numbers. You can see week-long rainfall accumulations up to 1,000 millimetres. That's pretty typical for Far North Queensland on a wet week. This rainfall is absolutely not unheard of for them, that's for sure. So we're not talking about history in the making here, but still some very significant rainfall, to say the least. Further inland as well, in the mountains adjacent to Innisfail and Tully, we'll be seeing up towards about 300 or 400 millimetres there, just over the ranges and out towards Ravenshoe. Those accumulations will be well up towards 300 millimetres. But like I said, this is going to be exclusive coastal rainfall, so for those of you on the coast, and even Tully might be a bit too far inland to pick up the 4-figure rainfall accumulations here, but for those of you on the coast, right up towards the Cairns area, some big-time rainfall accumulations are possible. The axis can get it wrong sometimes with where the rainfall is located, and you can see here Cairns is obviously going to pick up a lot more than 30 millimetres of rainfall, but for the most part, in terms of the numbers, the axis is a very good forecast model, especially for this time of the year up in North Queensland. It very rarely misses in a dramatic fashion. I would say that Cairns is looking at about 2 to 250 millimetres of rainfall. Surrounding communities such as Mareeba, Atherton and Ravenshoe will probably see about 150 to 250 millimetres apiece, and then areas outside of Cairns such as Corunda are probably looking at about 300 millimetres. The further north you get and the closer you get to the Daintree rainforest, the closer you be getting to those significant rainfall accumulations once again. I reckon the forecast for the Daintree rainforest around Cape Tribulation and Port Douglas and Mossman as a whole, I think that's a little bit on the low side at this time. I don't really see a world where they don't pick up 400 or 500 millimetres of rainfall, but again, we will wait and see with what rainfall is expected to play out. We'll get a much more accurate look at the forecast as every day ticks on, but you can see between other forecast models here, the Eastern West really not calling for significant rainfall or anything really significant here, 200 or 300 millimetres, and of course much more rainfall than that's going to fall just because of the rainfall rates that are going to be streaming through. The GFS forecast model are calling for some really significant rainfall here. I actually think the GFS might be the forecast model to follow here in terms of the swathe of the rainfall and its spread here. Tully and Cardwell picking up the most here at about that 800 or 900 millimetre mark, and then you can see some big time falls expected inland towards Ravenshoe and Atherton, and we're getting that 250 millimetres on the forecast for Cairns. So I do like the detail that the Axis forecast model can throw out, but I reckon the GFS here has created a very, very good forecast for rainfall. So screenshot this, take a look at this, whatever. I think this is exactly how things are going to play out. Townsville, down to Townsville. Oh, you're a hard place to forecast. sometimes, especially because you're going to be on the southern side of this rainfall swathe here. Depending on what showers swing into the Townsville area, they could either pick up 100 millimeters or they could pick up 300 millimeters. I'm going to err on the side of caution and say expect 150 millimeters there in Townsville. Even then, you might be falling a little bit short of that number, but depending on what rainfall comes through for the Townsville area is going to really make or break the amount of rainfall that they do end up picking up. Townsville can be a really difficult place to forecast just because the rainfall is normally heading in a different direction. I think the majority of the rainfall for Townsville will come in on the first couple of days of this rainfall event here before the winds swing out from the southeast, and once they swing out from the southeast, then Townsville is pretty much protected from all of the showers. Now, there is actually a very significant reason to why there's going to be so much rainfall across the Queensland coastline, and it is, of course, sea temperatures here. Look at them, 30 degrees, pushing 31 along the coastline. This is bathwater, this is. Now, North Queensland, the coastline generally at this time of the year averages between 28 and 29 degrees, so what is 1 or 2 degrees warmer? Well, that's actually a very significant difference in the amount of energy that the ocean can hold, and as such, evaporation rates across the ocean around North Queensland is going to be dramatically higher, and that's going to be presenting the risk of much more rainfall, probably about 2 or 3 times the amount of rainfall from a regular rainfall event or a regular rainfall river streaming into Queensland, and as such, that's why the rainfall accumulations are so high. The Eastern River hasn't picked up on that in its forecast, but the GFS and the Axis G3 are doing a pretty good job at it, but this is why we're expecting 4-figure rainfall accumulations over this time spread of not even a week, and this is why we're going to be seeing rainfall accumulations on certain days up to about 300 or 400 millimeters across the North Queensland area. It is because these sea temperatures here are piping hot, and when this rainfall streams into the coastline, it's going to have an awful lot of energy and an awful lot of evaporation to pick itself up and really drench the sky and then wring it all out over the Cassowary Coast and the far northern reaches of Queensland in general. But yeah, that does it for just the far north of Queensland. In terms of stuff for the central areas of Queensland, there isn't an awful lot on the forecast for them either in terms of the rainfall. Depending on if they get a tropical cyclone passaging through the area, it's not looking awfully likely at this time, but if we do get a direct hit of a tropical cyclone somewhere around the Townsville or Bowen area later on into the first week of February, there will be some significant rainfall accumulations there, and also, of course, a pretty significant impact from a tropical cyclone, but at this time it's not looking likely right now, and of course we're looking very far into the future, and as I've said, the first week of February is still very much up in arms in what we're expecting in the weather world across the central and the far northern Queensland coastline, and up until February 1st there's not an awful lot on the forecast just in general for the central Queensland area. There will be a few storms here and there on a couple of days. You can see a couple of storms expected to pipe up tomorrow afternoon and evening. It's actually going to be a pretty favourable environment for storms on both Friday, Saturday and also in towards Sunday across central Queensland, especially down in towards the south central regions of Queensland on Sunday. So we could be seeing a couple of good thunderstorms there, which could deliver some heavy rainfall, some large hailstones, and also some damaging and locally destructive winds in places. And speaking of thunderstorms, it leads us very nicely on into the next part of the video, which is, of course, the southeast Queensland thunderstorm risk. They've got about a 3-day thunderstorm outbreak expected throughout the course of today. We're on day 2 of it right now. Some good thunderstorms blew through last night, and also a good thunderstorm currently moving through the Gold Coast, the Tweed Heads area this morning here. You can see some pretty heavy rainfall accumulations currently in the core of this system here, starting to move offshore. So let me know how this storm was across the Gold Coast, especially in the southern areas of the Gold Coast. I think that they've picked up some pretty significant activity here, and certainly going to be some big puddles moving throughout the course of today. But yeah, Lismore copped it, that's for sure. Gold Coast area seems to be just a little bit too far north to really cop this storm here, but they would have got a good light show towards the south this morning. Plenty of big black clouds moving through the area as well. One thing you're going to notice across the southeast of Queensland is just how quickly these temperatures over the coming couple of days are going to rise. You can see temperatures already 31 degrees in the Brisbane metro area. They're going to rise quite dramatically as well throughout the course of today. Good thunderstorms around Wollongong and Stanthorpe this afternoon and evening. We could be seeing a couple of severe thunderstorms in that area here, and you can see on the Axis C Brisbane forecast model, the convective forecast model, some intense thunderstorms possible into the New South Wales side of things, and then some good thunderstorms inland from the Sunshine Coast and up to about Bundaberg and Hervey Bay as well, even as far north as Gladstone, to be honest, some good thunderstorms there. And then it's going to be tomorrow that's going to steal the show in terms of the runaway great conditions of these thunderstorms, but some really good thunderstorms, some really powerful thunderstorms expected into the northern areas of the Sunshine Coast and into the southeast areas of Queensland, Taroom, Idesvold, Guyanda, Mount Perry, Proston, Kingaroy, Gomerri, some really good thunderstorms expected in those areas, and then further inland out towards Rolleston, Emerald, Alpha, Jericho, under some really warm conditions into the mid-40s tomorrow out there, some really warm temperatures expected, some great thunderstorms expected to fire up, and I'm expecting a very widespread swathe of severe thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon and evening across this area of central Queensland and even in towards the south central areas and the Sunshine Coast, expecting some really good thunderstorms thunderstorms in those area. The southeast corner of Queensland, though, Brisbane and the Gold Coast, they miss out on both nights. Not only are the thunderstorms going to remain over the scenic rim later on this afternoon and evening, and not too much in the way of showers and storms is expected, we could be seeing a brief storm front move through the Gold Coast area early tomorrow morning into kind of about the sunrise hour, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. We'll be seeing a good couple of storms move through the Gold Coast and the Brisbane areas there that could deliver some healthy rainfall accumulations. But in the way of severe thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening, nothing really on the forecast, and that's in stark contrast to the convective available potential energy values. With the heat that's going to be building tomorrow afternoon and evening, and along that low pressure system, we're expecting these values here to jump up into the high 4,000s and early 5,000s. And if you know anything about the CyclonesOZ channel, we're obsessed with these numbers here, and they can make or break thunderstorm outbreaks here. Unfortunately, though, more fortunately, if you're not a fan of thunderstorms further inland, or even just across the coastline into the Brisbane and the Gold Coast area, these values do actually drop off a cliff here. They're still relatively high, but this is earlier on in the afternoon. You can see later on in the afternoon these values do drop off, and as such, severe thunderstorms are not really expected into the southeastern corner of Queensland. If they do fire up, though, man, they're going to have some good conditions to play with. They're really going to have some healthy conditions to play with in that area, and as such, they'll be able to go boom and rapidly develop really quickly and really cause some problems, I reckon, for the southeast of Queensland. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think there just won't be the conditions there. It won't be the perfect setup, whether it be wind speeds or humidity. I don't think there's going to be enough humidity in the atmosphere. There'll be plenty of that stuff across central Queensland, though, and coupled with very high humidity instability values as well. Further inland, we are expecting a really good and healthy thunderstorm outbreak throughout the course of Friday afternoon, especially across the central Queensland coastline into the coastal rim. And it's going to be a very hot day as well tomorrow. Need I say much more? I mean, take a look at the temperature forecast here. Winton, Longreach, Muttaburra, Jericho, McKinley, and some of the other communities out in central Queensland, all expecting tops of 43 or 44, even pushing 45 in places. It is going to be blisteringly hot out there. So again, make sure you are staying cool and staying hydrated, and the same deal for the southeast of Queensland as well. That is a long Queensland forecast. So thank you so much for sitting through it. We're going to head out of Queensland now. There's not an awful lot on the forecast looking forward from that. There could be a good couple of thunderstorm outbreaks and maybe some showers here and there as well across the southeast of Queensland into the first week of February, but that is well out of our scope right now in terms of the tropical weather forecast. So let's now head into the southwestern corner of Western Australia and touch on not only the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Sean, but the brutal heatwave that's still hammering the Perth area. I mean, I've lived in Perth my entire life and I've never felt it this hot before. This has been by far the hottest week in living memory for myself, and I can imagine a lot of people are going to be saying the same. It's just the nights, really. The temperatures in the day haven't been too bad, even coupled with the humidity that we've been having. The temperatures haven't been awful. They have been semi-tolerable, apart from the fact with my car air conditioning breaking down. Definitely need a new battery in there. Yeah, the nights have just been absolutely brutal. 27, 28, 29, I mean, 30 degrees overnight. It's just impossible to sleep in for stuff like that. I don't know how the guys in the tropics do it, that's for sure. Anyways, ex-tropical cyclone Sean currently sitting offshore here. It's about 600 kilometres offshore from Perth, and you can see it's really struggling. The low pressure centre looking beautiful, that's for sure, but really struggling. If you know anything about tropical cyclones and the remnants of them, you can tell that this is a system on its way out, that's for sure. A lot of cloud cover spinning around this system here, and you can see it is now starting to push a lot of that into the southwest of Western Australia, and a couple of good thunderstorms have been firing up as a result of that, and even a few trickles of rainfall now across the southwest capes, which will pipe up throughout the remainder of today. A bit more rainfall expected down there. This is going to be the last hot day for Perth. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we are still expecting a top of 39 degrees, and it could be pushing 40 or even early 40s across some of the northern suburbs and just over the hills as well, before later on tonight into tomorrow morning this low pressure system drags all of this heat down towards the south, and it looks like by tomorrow afternoon and evening we're looking at a much more humid and much more windier conditions as well across the Perth metro area. It could still be quite warm tomorrow across the Perth metro area. We could still be seeing temperatures later on in the afternoon pushing into the high 30s, especially across the hills, and it's going to be a lot warmer further inland as well, out towards the goldfields and into the central wheat belt. Temperatures will be up towards 46 or 47 once again, but it looks like the southwest might actually be spared from these awful heat, and then a couple of showers might come in through the course of tomorrow night into Saturday morning, and it looks like a few showers are going to linger here and there throughout a very humid Saturday by the looks of things, so hopefully temperatures are a little bit cooler there, and showers actually lingering throughout the remainder of this weekend, and pushing the forecast forward even further. You can see the rainfall does pretty quickly drop out of the Perth area, and it looks like it'll be a return to the warm conditions from next week onwards. I mean, just give us a break, just give us a couple of weeks of cooler weather. I'm just dying for winter right now, and we've still got a couple more months of summer to get through across the southwest corner of WA. Making good time here, so we're going to spend a couple of minutes just talking about the tropics. It doesn't really look like an awful lot is going to be happening, though, unfortunately, for the Northern Territory. They're desperate for some rainfall up there, especially around the Darwin area, but you can see 14-day rainfall accumulations not looking too hot here. 180 to 190 millimeters of rainfall. That's nothing at this time of the year, and especially considering we're now moving into a high energy period, especially with Queensland, the amount of rainfall they're going to be picking up, the Northern Territory and people into the Arnhem Land and the northern parts of the Northern Territory, and even into the northern parts of WA's Kimberley region, they'll be looking on at Queensland in envy. Maybe not so much the Kimberley region. They have had some good rainfall from tropical cyclone Sean, especially in its formative stages along the Kimberley and especially across the Pilbara coastline, so they're not in desperate need of rainfall, but you can see drought conditions now really developing across parts of the Northern Territory, and they're starting to get up towards exceptional to extreme drought conditions across the Carpentaria coastline. And of course, also further inland, they've really struggled for rainfall since about, I believe it was November, the last really decent rainfall that they got across the Northern Territory. So this monsoon has been really difficult so far this year for parts of the Northern Territory, and it looks like they are going to miss out on some good rainfall right out until at least February, when maybe some good rainfall comes through from a week of thunderstorms expected up there. But again, I wouldn't be getting my hopes up if you're in the Northern Territory for rainfall piping up anytime soon. There's not anything consistent on the forecast, no kind of rain depressions or tropical lows that are expected to spin up until at least the 5th or the 6th of February here, when you can see one spinning up over Melville Island. But we've had this pretty consistently on the forecast for the last couple of days, where we're seeing tropical cyclones spinning up at the end of the forecast period, and unfortunately that really is quite meaningless to the people in the Northern Territory that desperately need that rainfall, and they don't need it in 2 weeks, they need it right now. Unfortunately, though, it looks like that rainfall could come in the form of a tropical cyclone, but it's not going to go for the Northern Territory. In fact, it's not going to go for anywhere in Australia. It looks like it's going to remain well offshore from WA. After about the 30th of January, we are expecting some kind of monsoonal trough to spin up between the Cocos Keeling Islands and then across towards Christmas Island. The forecast models have been pretty consistent with this over the last couple of days, and this will likely spin up at least one tropical low that will turn into a tropical cyclone into the first couple of days of February here, and you can see it does become actually a respectable intensity up to about Category 2, probably pushing Category 3 status here in a very similar position to where Tropical Cyclone Sean was when he attained peak intensity. The GFS has been calling for 2 systems to develop out of this monsoonal mess that's expected to develop, but you can see that they're expected to develop in much more different locations here. You can see one closer towards Mauritius and Madagascar than it is to Australia, and then the other one here nestled between the Cocos Keeling Islands and Christmas Island. So again, there is still a little bit of discrepancies between the forecast, and there are some details that need to be ironed out, but considering they're not a West Australian land threat or a land threat at all, threat to Western Australia or Australia at all, I should be saying, it is probably not really worthwhile going over into the nitty-gritty of this, because again, I could talk about these tropical cyclones all day, but it doesn't look like it is going to be worth it. Conditions aren't going to be a problem for these systems, though. They're going to have plenty of energy in the sea temperatures to really go boom and make what intensity they want. You can see 28, 29 degrees Celsius waters, and cold in comparison to Queensland, but still warm enough for a tropical cyclone to attain Category 5 status, that's for sure. So conditions still looking good for tropical cyclone Genesis. It's a good thing that nothing's going for the WA coastline, but unfortunately the Northern Territory in desperate need of some rainfall. They'd kill for a tropical low at this time, and I do imagine a lot of people in the NT are going to be looking over at North Queensland with envy. Anyways, that is all that I have time for today. Thank you so much for all the recent support in the videos, the lovely comments as well. I do get back to every one of them, but I do read every one of them. I'm struggling to get back to them just because of time right now, but do leave me a comment in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you today as well. Flick me an email as well. There's a link in the channel description. I'd be more than happy to take a look at some photos of weather that you've got. Anything, just send it through. Be very happy to have a look at it, and thank you to all of the people that have been reaching out over the last couple of days. But that is all for me today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. The names are on screen right now. Could not run this show without them, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.